I am Nahed Kabbani, and this is the Lighthouse for today's viewers. Welcome to our show. Today we have a special guest. I discovered this person and I believe I brought you a good show. We will have a journey from jail to research. Let's introduce our guest. Will you please welcome to our show?
Hello, my name is Marius Koga. I am an assistant professor of public health at the UC Davis Medical School. I'm also the president of an immigrant-driven healthcare research organization called VIRTIS here in Sacramento. And I'm also the principal investigator and project director for the research healthcare program in contact with the state of California that is housed in the Department of Public Health of the medical school and is the scientific arm of the state regarding refugee health. But aside from all these titles, I think I could also answer that I am a Patrick Koga, 3725, prisoner, political prisoner of a high security prison in Romania. And it was many years ago. So that's where all it started.
Okay, okay. So it caught my attention, your help for immigrants and refugee, and we know there is a lot of people around us, especially in Carmichael area and my home town and things, and I noticed your service through a person also introduced you to me.
Right.
Because we are in bad need for the Iraqi people and Afghani people around us, and Syrian coming soon. They need a lot of help, and I need to know from somebody like you about what are you doing to put hands together, to not work everybody by himself or herself, to be weak here and here. We need to be strong enough as helping humanity, and I find you. God sent you to me.
Thank you. Yes, I actually have a PowerPoint presentation which we will show during the show later on. That has about 30 slides showing various aspects of the organization, its partnership with the medical school, its support from the Global Health Institute, from international organizations, its growth and its vision. But before that, let me answer the question very simply by saying that this organization provides clinical services for people that are traumatized by war, Iraqi refugees, Afghans that had 30 years of warfare from the Soviets and then from us. The Russian population, that is about 250,000 people in Sacramento only, and that is a tenfold growth in the past 20 years. People that suffered 70 years under the communist yoke and been traumatized, they're here and quite invisible. And so are Romanians and Bosnians who escaped the Bosnian War. And it's a huge, large population, quite invisible, because we don't fit the traditional description of underserved populations. Like, we're not African American, we're not Latinos, we're not Asians, but we're traumatized and we have problems. And we live in a foreign, alien country, and it's difficult and it's hard to navigate the healthcare system, the job system. And before you know, the old trauma of the old world, the war back home, is compounded by the trauma of acculturation, poor acculturation, and the drift of our kids who try hard to integrate and to assimilate and to develop American identities. And you have an intergenerational conflict and gap and pain in the family and so forth. So we try, for this population, we try to bring clinical services, which is counseling. Counseling in Arabic, counseling in Romanian, counseling in Farsi, in Dari, in Pashto, in Russian, and so forth for these people. And the counselors are themselves former refugees, former immigrants who have been studying various mental health professionals from psychiatry, like myself, and 3 others, 2 psychological, specializations such as Psych D, PhD, MFTs, and so forth. We provide those services on Fulton Avenue in a recently opened clinic. We reopened it in spring. But also, equally important, we conduct research.
Mm-hmm. Believe it or not, I don't know if you have it in your research that even the Palestinian people who got the first immigration and the longest immigration, they didn't get the help, the psychology help to go out of that trauma. Even how many years, 64 years, until now, they struggle with that inside of them and the fear inside of them. They didn't go out because they didn't, as Arab, they don't admit it.
That's right.
They don't see it. I guess Romanians have the same story.
Exactly.
The ego, and they ignore all these things. They think they are strong enough to cover everything, and there is nothing wrong with them. In the meantime, you can see from their reaction that there is something inside of them. And people think this is terrorist, this is bad, this is good, but nobody pays attention to the inside of them to give them that help they need.
Right, and I think it's our role and obligation towards the host society, the American society, and towards our communities to inform the system about our different ways of understanding culturally and constructing culturally distress, trauma. We come from cultures of shame that there's a lot of social stigma on disclosing family distress and trauma, and seeking mental health services. The Arabs, for example, nobody would want to be called Majnoon, right? So why would it go to a psychiatrist, a counselor, when you have a good family that's going to listen to you? Why would you pay somebody, a pay counselor, to provide services that are provided from the heart by wise people in the family? Well, when the family is distressed and not strong enough to provide, and where the kids cannot get the services from parents who are not integrated here, then the problem arises. So that is why we banded together, we came together, individuals from so many countries in this organization. We're 40 people. Actually to speak for ourselves, to do research, to teach, and to make the providers aware. You're right about the Palestinian trauma of so many years of occupation, but so is the 70 years of the people living in the Soviet yoke, and so is the Afghans 30 years. When you look at Afghanistan, the post-traumatic stress disorder rates, I mean the number of cases per population, is over 85%.
Wow.
Meaning everybody's traumatized. I imagine the Palestinians would be pretty much the same. So how do you express that pain? What if you're not allowed to express it because of shame, and you express it through physical pains? Bujani Rasi, Bujani Albi, right? I have a headache, I have a heartache, I go to the emergency room.
I have to.
I'm sorry, yes.
I have to aware our viewers that our guest mix up the language with little Arabic, even not clear, but it's Arabic in between. He is Romanian, but he knows some Arabic words, so that's why sometimes the language changes.
Yeah, sorry, they just come from the sessions with people, yes.
Okay, so explain it in English after that.
That's right.
Yeah.
We call that in medicine somatization. So somatization is a process by which psychological conflict is not expressed through verbal means, but through physical means, such as pain of the heart. So you have simulates an angina. People think you have a heart attack. So instead of seeing a counselor who may cost you or the taxpayer $100, you will see the emergency room, which is going to cost $2,000 because you have a imminent heart attack. So, the research that we want to do is manifold, and it would like to cover many facets. We just completed a large survey of 500 participants in the Russian community, mapping the anxiety and the depressive disorders, and trying to see how they express that. We'd like to do that, and we'll have to do that with the Arab population and the Afghans. And we'll see if the cultures of shame and social stigma prevents them from seeking help, help which has to be culturally competent. Now, what is the cost to the taxpayer of doing nothing and having these people overutilize primary care services, their doctors, or emergency rooms? So I think it is a matter both of heart and a matter of fiscal competence and mindfulness, that we're all together in the same community, no matter the enclavization of various groups. And so we have to work together and to live together.
Yes, absolutely. Knowing the background is very important, but imagine how difficult it is to be on the shoulder of American people or the people in service, to know the background of each community comes from nowhere to compare to them.
Yes.
American people live happily and quietly together. Yes, there is differences between state and state, and culture, little bit differences, but they all American. They have the basic understanding, and they have the rules, and the country, the same altogether. But as you mentioned, Afghani or Romanian or Yugoslavian came from another side of the world. We don't understand their background, so it's better to have people from their side, understand them, to help them through the system, but they know the language, they know the background, the culture.
Right.
Not to feel, oh, he's yelled at his son, we have to put him in jail. We have to take that son, have him in another family because he is tough. He is tough for some reason. If we find that reason, people will live happier, and the taxpayer will not throw money away without reason, without need.
That's right.
So maybe we will have a lot of things to talk about it in details. Let's have a break and then we'll come back.
Thank you.
So we'll be back soon.
You're watching The Lighthouse for today's viewers, brought to you by oneworldforyou.org.
So before the break, Dr. Marius brought us a good point to talk about it today, which is the background of the immigrants. Each group have different cultural background. We cannot understand them in America in easy way. That's why we waste money, as he mentioned, taxpayer waste money for paying for emergency room, for example, instead of going to a therapist or psychiatric. So let him continue explain to you, my viewers, what does that mean to us. Will you please?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to say a few words about navigating the healthcare system.
Okay.
The American healthcare system is so complex. It's such a maze, even for the American-born, American culture, raised individual, that they need themselves guides and helpers, let alone an Afghan or an Iraqi who's coming from Mosul. So we were thinking of creating a system of health navigators, similar to what the Fremont city has for the Afghans in their little Kabul, and they're called Rokchapal, with a Pashto word that means navigators, to create a system of navigators for various communities, individuals who are trained and who can help their own community navigate a system. But not only for health and for mental health and medical health, but also for legal help and the legal system. Oftentimes, the legal system and the medical system are considered separate, but actually they're very connected, especially in traumatized people who have the so-called battle mind, that we'll see later in the presentation, who feel threatened, and who have a very different understanding of what is right and what is wrong, what is legal, what's legal, the way it has been constructed in their own original worlds and societies. American law is not necessarily universal law, and there is no orientation for the immigrant when they come to this country. not to do or to do other things that the American law requires. So I'd like to create also a connection between the law system navigator and health system navigators. And if I may show you a few slides later on that will explain in more detail. But once the communities have been mapped by people themselves in terms of their cultural construction of health, of illness, their expectations, their sick role, how do they see themselves as sick people? How do they seek help? Do they comply? How do they comply? And that information to be translated and conveyed to providers through training, through education. I think that would create a good partnership between communities and providers.
That would be great. Yes, you are absolutely right.
Yeah. Yes, we'd like to show the first slide. And this is actually the inside of a high security prison where I was housed by the communist regime as a political prisoner many years ago in Romania. But people have come, my colleagues, doctors and nurses and psychologists who are in the organization have come from this sort of basements, terrible places, and have made a life as refugees in America and have made a life as professionals. So instead of waiting for and demanding from the American establishment and the host society to service us and to support us, or from the communities to do something for us, we tried actually to function as a bridge between our communities and the medical establishment, for example, and the growth comes from inside out, from ourselves. So it's like reaching hands out, both sides, and creating a bridge. And I will believe that that growth is natural and is motivated because 90% of us are former refugees from Afghanistan, from Bosnia, Korea, Iran, Romania, Iraq, and so forth. And in my case, you see the two pictures superimposed. The basement picture is actually the prison Jilava, the infamous prison, the high security prison of the dictator Ceausescu, and with its death row. And it was a horrible place. And above, you see the medical school where I teach today. Many people have come the same way here in our organization are people that have escaped prisons, have suffered imprisonment, have gone to schools, are part of the community, are part of both American and Iraqis, American and Afghans, American and Russians, and so forth. And this is illustrative of who we are. And we are...
Go back.
We are quite, I say many, not in the organization, but we're representative of 14 million people, of immigrants, people who are born somewhere else. You ask Californians, where are you born? They're going to tell you that, every 38% of the population of the state will say they were born somewhere else. Sooner or later, no matter what I teach at school or I lecture at various other schools, whether nationally or internationally, they're going to ask me, so where are you born? Where are you from? Sooner or later, they come to that question. So this is the most cosmopolitan city, Sacramento, of the most cosmopolitan, say, state in the Union, California. And I think it's crucial that we understand that and we drive basically this paradigm shift in cultural competence, which actually the state of California has been doing for 25 years. Now, it is time that the immigrants themselves or refugees step up to the plate and contribute more and speak for themselves and help refine the cultural competence process, adding more to research and more to policy changes, not only to intervention, but moreover to policy policy changes. I think an important part is also, as I would like to show in some slides further, is that we should see California as for what it is. California is the receiving end, like a lake, of so many rivers that are flowing into California. Iraq, Ukraine. Ukraine has poured 200,000 people in the past 30 years. So many countries, Syria is going to bring. We know 15,000 Iraqis have been approved to come here. So we know this is going to be their home. If we are to budget, it's like a home. You're budgeting your resources for your kids and family and guests. But if you should think that you're going to have next year a lot of guests, 15,000, how do you budget for that? You have to think three-dimensionally, connecting California with the countries of origin, and thinking, having a predictive model for healthcare. And that is the paradigm shift that we see in public health. And working and teaching at the, researching at the public health department and teaching there, I see our Institute of Global Health Studies, which is a part of the UC consortium, and its specific center for migration, expertise in migration and health, is thinking this way and in a three-dimensional, predictive, anticipatory way, and VIRTIS is aligned to this. So partnerships with the countries of origin, partnerships with Pakistan, for example, UNHCR, the refugee camps, finding out a partnership with Turkey, with UNHCR camps, finding out the Iranians who are coming here, would be important to inform policymakers. I was telling you that there are 38% of total population, 40 million legal immigrants in the state of California, which creates serious challenges to the public health system. The problem, there's an immigrant problem. Aside from bringing their rich cultural contributions, the immigrants bring some problems, such as we don't have enough systematic epi surveys. We don't know how many of these people have post-traumatic stress disorder, how many have comorbid conditions, depressed, how many are suicidal, and so forth. And oftentimes the resources are little, so we think of tending to yesterday's crisis, not to prepare for 3 years from now. And that creates a constant to perpetual crisis. So we need a real shift, because the 21st century is a century of global migration and global health. We see that out of the almost 7 billion people on the planet, 1 billion people are in constant movement. A quarter is moving between countries as refugees. 3/4 are being displaced internally, called IDPs, internally displaced persons. But this globalization is nothing new. It happened when the Roman Empire disintegrated, when the Egyptian Empire disintegrated, when the Persian Empire disintegrated. It happened after the Sykes-Picot Agreement that divided the Arab world. It happened constantly. It happened in 1848 in the feudal Europe with the collapse of the Habsburg. Anytime an old world order collapses, you have a rearrangement of the population. People are moving with all their pains from the old place, with the new pains not adjusting to the new place, bringing conflicts, bringing groups in conflict, and baffling policymakers and politicians. And then all the consequences on everybody. So I think it's important that we think globally, dynamically. We don't think just us. Us is many of us, actually.
In fact, America built up from all over the world to begin with.
Right.
And now immigrants comes with huge numbers from certain areas. It depends on the war and the things what is around us brought that people here. And we are obligated to help, and that help comes too much for us, and especially with the economy now.
That's right.
Too many things to think about it, but this is the way America built up, but without the traumas that much.
That's right. But I think we can now. We can help America, because we're also Americans. We can help America understand and help America work more effectively and efficiently and more cost effectively with traumatized people. But I'd like to say a few words about trauma and PTSD. So trauma is any stressor that overwhelms one's ability to maintain the same state, the homeostasis. For example, blood acidity is between 735, 745, and anything Less than that or more than that creates metabolic acidosis, alkalosis, and kills us. So there is a certain narrow, range in which mood can have its swings before you are bipolar, depressed, or manic. Acidity of the blood goes up and down, body temperature, right, and so forth. So is with stress. Too much stress in a situation of life-threatening, physical beating, rape, getting of one's family, and so forth, places a tremendous stress, more than one can take, and then the result is post-traumatic stress disorder, which develops in various phases, such as acute stress reaction the first 48 hours, and then up to 4 weeks. The same thing is called with a different name, acute stress disorder. Some bounce back, but many develop something called acute PTSD, which lasts up to 3 months. If they go beyond 3 months and go forever, that it might be chronic PTSD. So when we think about Afghans, for example, and the high incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder, that is a terrible thing, because the diagnostic criteria, the signs and the symptoms that people experience, basically it is like, because of the stress one faces, you have to gear up for battle, for self-protection. So you're in constant hyperarousal, you can't sleep, you're afraid to sleep, you're on the watch, you're irritable, you can't concentrate, you're hypervigilant, everybody's an enemy, you have a startle reaction, muffler goes off, you hit the ground. This is what happens with veterans or with others, people that come from war zones. You avoid talking about things that remind of trauma. You avoid walking to those places, discussing that. So your life becomes narrowed and restricted. And then you have flashbacks and experience intensive fear. So those are things that will impact one's life, family life, academic performance if you're a student, your work ability, and then before you know, you can't work. If you cannot work, then you become poor, and the poverty adds to your misery, and it goes on and on and on. The terrible thing is that trauma creates mistrust. And if there is mistrust, then you cannot cooperate with providers, with helpers. You think that nobody can help you. And this creates horrible challenge. We saw that in the Bosnian war refugees, where 70% of people were having no trust in anybody, in government or providers. So the effect, the worst effect of trauma is not fear. It is not the hyperarousal, although those are horrible, but it's the loss of hope, the loss of meaning, the loss of hope in, if the person is religious, in God, or if not religious, in the belief that there is some meaning in the world, some sense to everything, some reason to exist. If that is lost, that is terrible outcome. We know that from the ancient Greeks. Epictetus, for example, talks that it's not that important what happens to a person as to the meaning that a person gives to what has happened. So I think what we realize as former refugees and people that spend years in being under torture and being in prisons, and now there are work counselors or psychiatrists or public health workers, most of us were saved, so to speak, by finding meaning and reclaiming that sense of control, sense of power. And this is what we want to inculcate and to support in refugees and traumatized people. Ability, to help them make sense what happened and reclaim that center of power. And the rest is easier than to be tended to. Because the problems of the Palestinians, for example, or the Iraqis. So first of all, people that come here, imagine people that came from Mosul or from Baghdad. They have a loss of cultural space and sense of orientation. They lost your GPS, so to speak. They are in a different world, behave differently, different expectations, so forth. Gender role reversal. A lot of men, because of cultures of shame, they feel bad to be cleaners or to be in menial positions when there were doctors and lawyers and engineers and so forth. So they then don't take the job because their social credit, according to their culture, will go down. Women, however, they will take the jobs because they're allowed to, are more flexible, And also because they have kids to support too, and husbands to support.
Harder work.
Exactly, and many times the Afghan women, that's the outcome of the Afghan war, as many have said, that the Afghan women have become much tougher than before, are amazing survivors. So women then succeed and to be providers and breadwinners, and this disturbs the balance at home,
Yes.
creates domestic violence or a sense of low self-esteem for the husband, and then the kids are impacted. So only from 2 losses, you see already how many problems happen.
This point, American people will never understand it, because American people accept if he doesn't have a job, the man doesn't have a job, the woman will work.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with it. But for Arab or Afghani dignity,
Yes.
man dignity, oh my God, he is nothing, nobody.
Yes.
So he will not take it easily.
And that
And he will not accept his wife working and bringing the bread
Yes.
and put him down in his
Yes.
mind, you know.
That's right.
He becomes smaller,
Yes.
which is wrong, and it needs to be fixed up.
And needs counseling.
Yeah.
Needs culturally
counseling.
competent counseling and support. And then, of course, there is a language barrier, there is unemployment. There are cultural barriers to acculturation and religious barriers. How could I change my values? If I change my values, maybe I stop becoming Romanian.
Yeah, I become nobody.
I don't want to become American 100% because I don't want to be a person without legs, a tree without roots. I want to be a Romanian American. That's how I contribute to this society. Not being just a person who is totally cut off from its roots. But what if the roots are in conflict with the branches? What if my values are in utter conflict with these values here? What do we do with that? Who's helping me to reconcile that? Where are the systems and the providers? So that's where the medical school, the Global Health Institute, VIRTIS would come together and think and work and research and find ways how to birth this very complex bicultural, baby, basically. Then you see the problems that we find are high rates of adjustment disorders, which are not tended to become later on depressive disorders and anxiety and so forth. They come with a price tag. Then there are health disparities. A lot of people having problems but not using the services. And this happens because of shame, of the language barriers, lack of transportation, not knowing where the service is, or providers who are culturally incompetent. Providers who would, for example, not accept that the 21 or 19-year-old adult, mature Arab girl would come in with her father and an uncle and a mother to counselor because they're counseling just one person, not 3. They pay for 1, not for 3, right? And of course there are legal things such as confidentiality that are prevented, but the Arabs function as family, not as individuals. So there are a lot of things that need to be discussed and researched in terms of health disparities.
Yes, to be open to the public to talk about it.
Right. There is also from the individuals who came from a very, I say, welfare state like Romania, former communist countries, and Soviet Union, although they were extremely oppressive, everybody survived at the minimum survival. They were so disempowered that they expect everything to be done for them by the state. And they are not expected that they should have creativity, independence, and do things. It's a learned helplessness. They have been institutionalized for so many years, for decades, raised in institutionalization and dependence. They are here to extend, to reach out the hand. This creates shame for our communities, shame for ourselves, and it's really very damaging to us and to society. So we look up to the examples of people, of our Ukrainians or Russians or Romanians or Hungarians or Serbs who have succeeded and made it here. And so I think mental health is not only mental health, it's connected with learning good economics, learning good ways to business to succeed, to be successful here. So I think that should be an intervention that we would like to bring in the communities as well. And it affects the mental health of all. I presented various aspects of the disparity gap, and the way we see it and the way we, the communities, and on the other hand, the public health practitioners see it is quite different. So there are some, emphasis from the part of our providers on the patient needs to be informed. So we should do outreach and basically inform patients and communities and grief brochures and so forth. But the providers also should have a comprehensive database of our communities. I think that's equally important.
So your research brought the subject clearly to the point that you pointed everything now. So maybe we will discuss how to handle it, how to translate it to be effective for the community.
Yes.
So maybe we'll have a break, then we will talk about this subject.
Thank you.
We'll be back soon.
oneworldforyou.org, promoting cultural understanding through the media.
So we have been following up Dr. Marius to find the way he's researched for us, and he has a lot of information, real important information, especially for me, to understand how to deal with the immigrant and how to handle those things. So let's go back to Dr. Marius, educate us a little bit more about his special story. So how yourself handle that situation?
You mean trauma?
Mm-hmm. For sure, you have a lot of issues like the immigrants when you came in.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I think my story is pretty much the general story, the average story of personal, trauma, journey, and transformation, and survival, and hopefully more than that. The coping is not a linear, smooth process. It comes like tidal wave, and with highs and lows. You learn as you go. Sometimes you have helpers. Sometimes you have, bridges to cross. It is part of a very complex journey. But aside from my coping, having a family that is loving and caring and supporting, and friends. Having a practice, at least I had in my years in Romania, 25 years of martial arts, of practice. So practicing and meditating are very important. So for me, at the times when I hit a very severe depression for the first time in my life, in '93 for 2 years, I meditated. I found a dojo, a martial arts place where I could train again. I went back into training. And so that was important and kind of got me out, and I never had any, problems ever since. But aside from family, meditation, for me, for example, and involvement in work, very important was to understand, to research, to see what's happening to me.
Yes,
to step out of myself and look at myself with different eyes and reclaim control. I think that's a gift, but also a gift that is quite common, happen in many people, and something that we want to research, or actually started researching at the medical school and at VIRTIS. And that is looking into resilience, why people break down under trauma, and some people sail through this, some people become stronger after trauma than stronger than they were before. And there are mechanisms of the mind that we don't understand, that we should just support and listen to. And there are just amazing things. So let me give an example. My first imprisonment happened when I was 20 years old. This was before medical school. I had no education, just high school. But I was a well-read young individual who tried to escape and find his freedom, got caught 14 yards away from the border. I was shot at by the border guards, put in prison, tortured, beaten up, and sentenced to prison. While I was pacing in my first 2-3 days actually, in a prison, being in what Kubler-Ross, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross would call the stages of grief, of denial and so forth, in the first stage, not believing that I'm being in that disbelief of shock of being in prison, being behind bars. I had my mind automatically somehow found some sort of freedom. It just dawned on me at a certain point that I'm free. This was after pacing for 2-3 days, like a person in a cage. Realizing that I'm free because nobody can put shackles on my mind and heart. That if I decided to be free, to escape the communist gulag, I will do that no matter what. It's just a matter of time and finding the right strategy to do it. So by being put in the prison and being beaten and humiliated, my center of control has been taken away from me. Mm-hmm. My mind has found a way to jump in the future and to tell me that I'm only temporarily in the prison, so it has reclaimed again power. Mm-hmm. And this way, this was an artifact of the mind through which I coped with the first prison rather easily. I saw myself as a news reporter, future writer, collecting material for short stories about what happens to people in the underground and the dark recesses of prison. And I learned that story happening to others, important people like Viktor Frankl, who talks about in his book The Man's Search for Meaning, and regular people like myself and many others, or patients or clients who describe similar things. I think the human mind has an amazing capacity to bounce back and to make sense and to draw power even from trauma and to grow. And that's something that we need to help our people and the immigrant refugees communities.
That's wonderful, really.
But I would like to show a diagram. This journey of the refugee or immigrant is the journey of many heroes. The veterans that are coming back home. Those who fought the Trojan War, for example, Odysseus, who comes back and goes through so many challenges. Or, there are so many heroes in so many cultures and religions who go through an archetypal story of personal challenges and transformation. So, the war in Sarajevo starts before you were in the ordinary world, says the scholar Joseph Campbell in his hero's journey. And then the war starts and throws you into the extraordinary world of war. And that has a transformative effect. You have enemies, and you have allies, and you have mentors and teachers, and then you are destroyed and you are reborn with wisdom and with strength, and then you come out and give it to others. So what we have learned in our work with refugees is that the hero's journey becomes a sort of emblematic, symbol for VIRTIS, for our veterans, immigrants, and refugee trauma Institute of Sacramento. We have walked the hero's journey, all of us. And what we're learning, and we're learning to refine a model of intervention, to distribute it further to more people, and then to try to understand that perhaps this journey is not only the journey of the immigrants and refugees, but the journey of Americans themselves. There are two different journeys. We actually journey physically and emotionally from one country to another, to America. But an American sitting right here and having a country that spins around himself so fast that is impossible to catch up with in terms of keeping up your skills, your computer skills, your business skills, your every skills to be employable and to succeed. The individual lags behind and becomes almost an immigrant or a foreign, an alien in an alien place. A lot of people are alienated. And then we see trauma, our trauma, we see it in Americans. So this creates a great opportunity for partnerships and for trying to talk to each other and to try to understand that what's happening to us separately is part of a larger process that we should learn together. So when you look at, for example, the veterans and refugees, that we had two divisions in the organization, you think, what are the veterans doing together with refugees? We have nothing to do together, perhaps, only in the sense that the Afghans were the receiving end of the American military. But it's not so. When you look at the veterans, for example, and there are 2.2 million veterans that call California home, and over 500,000 of these veterans have post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. These people have been born here raised to be by the individualistic model of the Western culture, to be self-sufficient, to be strong, to function independently. They move into military cultural, and they have to function as groups, as teams, as units, as battalions. So they become institutionalized by the military service, then traumatized by wars. So when they come back, they have a hard time reintegrating and functioning as individuals. They function just like us, like groups.
Yes.
So we have a dialogue that we can open, and that's why we want to do that and talk about the same trauma from different sides and about the same hard time reintegrating. You asked me, what do we do? And I think that our acronym for our goals, it is pretty powerful, because it is about rising from the ashes, rising from terrible trauma and terrible situation being broken down. And this RISE acronym stands for 4 goals that we have. One is research. The other one is instruction or teaching. The other one is service, clinical service. The other one is empowerment. So when something horrible happens to me or to you or to anybody, the first gesture is to look, why is this happening? Why me? And how does it happen? And what can I do to fix this? It is a research, internal research. By doing this internal reflection, I gain power. And I learn. A learning that is internal, right? Instruction, and that moves into teaching others and explaining to others. So that becomes, this creates the ability to serve and to support and to create clinical services. And by doing that, you really lift up people's hearts and spirits. So we have research services, we have instruction servicing, training organizations, training providers, we have clinical services, and we have empowerment. And one of the empowerment programs is the Immigrant Student Leadership Program, which is basically intends to create a superhighway, career superhighway between immigrant communities and the medical school, teaching poor Iraqis or Romanians or Afghans how to become doctors when they have families that are not able and not educated, and to guide them through the complex systems and don't have the resources. So the medical school has a wonderful program called MAPS that has been initiated by undergrad students. It's called the Minority Association for Pre-Medical Studies. So we are linking up with them to try to help.
That's good.
Yeah, and that's part of the empowerment. Our programs are 4 strong programs and others who are developing.
Okay.
The Iranian program, the Romanian program, the Russian-speaking program, and the Afghan program that has been working for quite...
So 4 strong Arab program.
Yes, and now the Arab program is being developed by a gentleman from Iraq, from an engineer, Basil Al-Ansari, who's an amazing leader, and has developed the program not only for the Iraqis, but for all the Arabs.
For the Arab. He is a good leader.
Yes.
He's a good person.
We try to connect with countries of origin or other countries, and to do some international, transnational work. And I would like to show you a couple of images. Yes. This is the counseling services at VIRTIS Clinic on Fulton Avenue. It's on Fulton, just south of Marconi, where the services are available 24/7 in all these languages. And this is an image from Kyrgyzstan. So our organization has done some work in Turkey with the Iranian refugees, has done some work in Kyrgyzstan and Central Asia with the Kyrgyz and Uzbek conflict. So we're trying to do some interventions that are, if you look at this image, that are connecting basically the countries of origin with the countries, the receiving countries. And that is a transnational model of interventions. And this is, I think it's crucial for our work, and that's going to help or have the organization contribute to this paradigm shift in public health services. So that's where I think we're going. That's our intention, and we're extremely grateful, and I would like please to show just one last slide. The support that we have received from the medical school, UC Davis Medical School, Department of Public Health, from its former chair of the department, Dr. Mark Schenker, and also from the present chair, Dr. Ellen Gold, and also from the Global Health Institute and the Migration and Health Research Center. These centers have a large vision of population movement. And so we have received support in terms of partnership and guidance and mentorship to do our work. And then we'd like definitely to continue with research.
That's wonderful. Really good to know this information, and I meant to bring you to our show to educate our viewers also, because hands together will help, and whatever you have as research and you establish things, we can add to, not to start other things, to be building up a stronger basic things for all immigrants. And hopefully I will help with the Arab chapter, what you did.
Thank you so much.
Establish. Mr. Basil is really a good immigrant also, and
Yes.
he has a lot of intention to do, and he's very, very
Has a positive and
yes,
inspiring
positive
energy.
thinking.
Indeed, indeed.
So
And
I'm trying to build up also to bring all kind of small things here and there with the people, to put it together and put it in your side.
Thank you
and
so
work
much.
together for our new guests in their new home. They
Right.
need this kind of help. I really, on behalf of my viewers, I appreciate your coming and your information and your talent.
Thank you.
And you gave us a lot to do as homework. And for you, my viewers, I hope that I brought something to your mind to think about it. And we will have the information how to contact Dr. Koga for any help, if you can offer your help, or if you need any information. Actually, we will have it on the screen, and we would love to hear from you, because hands together will make the things, the job right, and America and American people have a great heart, and they are great givers. So I'm counting on you, my viewers. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.